So I made a post on the Machine Studio Instagram, and it was asking, I was just curious about what kind of responses I would get. I asked for those that understand the rules of the graffiti game. I was asking them why they felt that they exist. It seemed like most people got it and most people had a pretty good idea, but then you get the typical responses of people saying, oh, there are no rules, do whatever you want. And a lot of times, I don't even know if they're really graffiti writers, or maybe they're new or young. There was even one guy that was like, all he did was graph on paper. So, maybe they didn't quite understand why they're there and all these kind of things. So anyway, I wanted to jump on because I did a lot of thinking, and I was kind of thinking to myself, why do the rules exist? I mean, I always thought, we needed a code of conduct so that we're not out there fighting each other all the time and all this kind of stuff. But I really tried to think really deep on it and figure out like, what's really the core of this? And one word kept coming to mind, and it was preservation. It was like preserving the culture. And I'm pretty sure that that's a pretty good reason for them existing in the first place. I mean, I can't go back. I don't know when they were created, like in the 70s, maybe even the late 60s. I have no idea, like long ass time ago. So I wanted to just run through some of them, and I'm not going to list all of them because, some of them are somewhat subjective. A lot of people are bringing up rules that I've never heard of before. So I don't know, maybe different regions have different ones and stuff like that. So as far as the preservation thing, without the rules, obviously we would probably get into more conflict with each other. Dead writers' pieces would not last as long out on the street. Burners probably wouldn't last as long. Yards would get burned. Graph shops would probably get shut down because people are burning the spot, things like that. Just because, even if you do agree with them and understand them, just because you do follow them, it doesn't mean you're not going to get into beef. I think it's just mainly, it probably gives you a better chance of navigating through the culture without pissing off a bunch of people. And, the other thing about these, when you start thinking about them, they seem like common sense, but I know me personally, I don't know if I had to, but I broke the rules and got checked for it, I think I talked about it with Cub way back, maybe even the first episode. But as I was leaving Motor Yard, I caught like a huge fat cap tag, like a big 3-foot stupid tag, right on the wall outside of where you walk up. There was like a little hill right there, and it was in broad daylight, and I was kind of just, being an idiot, I guess. And Eclipse explained to me why that was a bad idea, and I don't know, I just hadn't thought of it, but it seems like common sense, if you catch a tag right at the entrance of a yard, you're drawing unnecessary attention to that yard. And, like I said, common sense, but when you're out there and you're doing all this shit, a lot of times, maybe sometimes common sense isn't as common as it would be if you're not sort of involved in this kind of chaotic culture anyway. So I'm going to go through some of these, and it's not meant to be like a full comprehensive list of every single rule and breaking down why they exist. But what I wanted to do was just talk about some of the main ones that I'm aware of and just kind of briefly talk about how they lead to the preservation of our culture. So one of the bigger rules that you hear all the time is like the hierarchy of things, like throwies over tags, pieces over throwies. There's some middle ones in between there, but that's kind of like the gist. So if if you're out there and it's illegal, say like a freeway or a street spot or something like that, and somebody has a tag and you do a throwie over it, although technically that is supposed to be okay, it doesn't mean that person's not going to be pissed at you because they risked their freedom to catch that tag, and then you went over it with a throwie. Or same thing, if somebody comes and does a full color burner over that throwie, technically according to this rule, it's okay, but it doesn't mean the person's not going to be pissed and you might catch beef over it, So to the preservation point, I mean, obviously, I think that goes without saying. It just establishes a hierarchy so that we kind of have a general understanding, can I go over this or can I not? But, there's people that are still going to get pissed. So it's kind of a tough one. So if tags are all the way at the bottom of the hierarchy, it kind of counts to not catch tags in people's backgrounds. I think that's pretty common sense. I don't know if that even applies to that rule or not. It just, don't do that shit. But let's see. I got these in a weird order. I want to do them in a better order than this. So let's talk about, I don't even know if this is like an established rule. It's something that we always talk about. It's like, don't burn the spot. And it's kind of what I opened up with here. Tags outside the yard obviously bring unnecessary attention to the yard. And when I say yard, in this case, I'm kind of talking about, behind buildings and shit, like yards where we get together and do pieces and stuff like that. But outside of a train yard is kind of even worse because you don't really want people to know that you did the trains there. That's kind of one of the things. That's one of the reasons why you don't leave your cans at the train yard. One of the reasons why you don't catch tags where you park, all these kind of things. Because if they see a lot of graph in a certain area, the cops are obviously going to want to know, why is there so much graffiti right here in the middle of this industrial area? Obviously, they're going in and painting trains, so don't burn the spot. I don't know if that's a rule. I think it is. I mean, people get checked for it all the time. You catch tags outside of graph shops too. You're going to get the graph shop shut down. You do all this kind of stuff around any kind of spot that graffiti writers use or a place that has graph shows or anything like that. If you're catching tags or painting all over the spot's neighbors or something like that, obviously that's going to contribute to burning the spot. There's another one that's very subjective, but it comes up all the time. It's a very common rule. It's don't go over what you can't burn. And so that one's a little bit tough in the sense that at a certain level, it becomes really subjective. So you may think your shit's better than this person, and they may think their shit's better than yours. You're both doing somewhere like 12, 13 color pieces and putting in a lot of effort. At that level, I don't know how you would even go about that. So me personally, I just don't go over any of that kind of stuff unless it's got a bunch of tags on it. And even then, I'll take pictures of it just to make sure I have a record that I wasn't going over a clean piece, even if like I technically feel like I could burn it. Again, it's subjective, so that's kind of tough. But I think it also kind of goes into the whole idea of the initial hierarchy, tags over throwies over tags, pieces over throwies. If somebody does like a somewhat simple 2-color piece with a border around it and that's it, and you want to come in and do like a big, huge burner with like a crazy background and a, bunch of colors and all this kind of stuff, maybe that's where that rule could apply. I still kind of tend to avoid, and this is at graph yards and things like that. I don't go over anybody on trains at all. I don't want to deal with that shit. So I don't want anybody going over my trains, and they're getting more and more rare these days. So I just avoid that altogether. But when you go into like a graph spot, like your local wash or wherever people gather to do pieces, these are the kind of things that I think about. And I just try to avoid as much issues as I can. And so I'll take some of these rules to the extreme. And I guess that's not even a rule. I just try not to go over anybody. There's always spots that have a bunch of tags and some stoners, found a bunch of cans and did some shit of their favorite band or something like that. Like that stuff, nobody's going to care if you go over that. So I find it's better just to go over that, even if it's not the best spot in the yard. Let the clean pieces rock. Along those lines, there's an understanding if a piece has a bunch of tags on it, then it's now fair game. So I'll go over those for sure. But if it just has like one tag on it, maybe I'll leave it just until it's a little more messy. If there's a bunch of tags or like some outlines or weird shit on top of it, then at that point, I'm not going to worry about it. But again, I'll take a picture of it just to make sure. I'm on this thing. I'm almost 50 years old. Beef is not even a part of my language anymore. So I just do everything I can just to kind of like get along with everybody and just be chill. But I understand in your younger years, maybe you don't care quite as much about that. So, just kind of giving my opinion on these things here. So one of the other things, this is a rule I believe in, and don't paint on personal property. So that's why you don't see a lot of tags on houses and garage doors and throwaways all over neighborhoods and shit like that. I believe it's because that rule's in place. Again, that's really common sense, but it is a rule that people understand, and older writers check younger writers when they fuck this up. You just don't want that kind of heat, and I don't know. I think it's probably also kind of a dick move when you think about it. The other one, don't paint on places of worship. I believe in that. I'm not a religious guy, but at the same time, I don't even know how to really talk about that one, to be honest. I mean, I wonder if you could get in extra trouble for that. Like if they were to interpret it as like, I don't know, maybe like a hate crime or something. Like if you were to paint on a synagogue, I don't know, maybe, but it's one of the rules that you hear it all the time. If anybody asks the rules of the game, or if you look on fucking Reddit or some shit, it'll probably be in there. So that's another one. But I guess what I could say about that is if you were to paint on a place of worship, it's possible that would bring a lot of unnecessary attention, and that would contribute to making it harder and go against the preservation of the culture. There's another one. I don't know if it's a rule, but it's something that people get pissed about, is like, don't side bust. So that one's kind of tough too, because, you see a wall that has like fucking all kinds of tags and throwaways and shit all over it. Somebody had to be the first on there. So the second person had to be the first to side bust it. So I don't know how that all plays out, but I do know that if somebody catches like a really specific spot and there's room for another person, and, you see it happen pretty, I don't know if I'd say regularly, but I've seen this come up before where somebody will catch a really cool spot and it'll be running for a really long time, and then someone goes and side busts, and then it gets buffed after that. So I believe that's why the rule is there. But people get pissed about it, but somebody had to be the first on a lot of the walls that we paint. So I don't know how that all comes together. So this one, I don't know if it's a rule, but they say like, don't clip other people's pieces. I think that's also common sense. If you're painting and somebody has a piece next to you, you don't want to like kind of go over a little tiny piece of their shit. You want to do your best to not clip into it. But I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going to leave that in there, because that just seems like very, very common sense, but I guess all of these are. And so the last one is very obvious. Don't go over dead writers' work. I mean, they're gone. They can't put up anything anymore. And to go over their shit is a total dick move. And, that one's a little tricky, because it requires you to, I think you should be aware of your local culture, obviously, or your local scene. I could see a lot of times where people aren't really aware. I guess this will speak to the importance of knowing the scene that you're in, because if and that's also tough, because a lot of people travel and shit. I'm not giving anybody a pass for going over dead writer stuff, but I'm saying there's going to be instances where ignorance comes in, where they just don't even know that writer has passed. But I mean, if you knowingly go over a dead writer's shit, then that's fucked up, very common sense, but people fuck it up. I mean, there's a video on the internet that this dude got blown up because fuck, man. I don't even know if I want to talk about it, but I'm not going to mention his name, because there's no need to give people like that any kind of, I don't even know if it would be fame. But what happened was, this guy, he was very disrespectful. He was doing these weird characters up all over his shit. If you went on his Instagram, I think his Instagram's probably gone, because he was just getting hammered. He was doing these weird characters, and they were always clipping over throwaways and all this kind of stuff. And then he did that over a dead writer. Somebody punched him in the face, and then he went and brought the cops back. At least that's how the video showed. I don't know. Actually, I just remember I said I was going to close on the dead writers shit, but I realized I forgot one. No snitching, obviously. You know, it's such common sense, but like you still hear people doing it. You know, it's like you're better off just taking whatever happens rather than snitching on people. It's just such a stupid thing to do because I don't think people quite understand that if they snitch on somebody, that shit is going to follow you forever. I'm talking like it could be 30 years from now. If you snitched on somebody, it's still going to follow you around. It's crazy how that stuff happens. So do yourself a favor. Just don't do that. All right. Well, that's my take. I'm sure most of the older writers or even just writers that are knowledgeable found this episode to be completely full of common sense, but common sense isn't as common as you might think. All right.
Appreciate each and every one of you guys who are supporting the cause and continue to spread the love. And yeah, stay up.